2 Samuel 9. Then David asked, "Is anyone still left from the family of Saul, so that I may extend kindness to him for the sake of Jonathan?" Now there was a servant from Saul's house named Zeba, so he was summoned to David. The king asked him, "Are you Zeba?" He replied, "At your service." The king asked, "Is there not someone left from Saul's family that I may extend God's kindness to him?" Zeba said to the king, "One of Jonathan's sons is left. Both his feet are crippled." The king asked him, "Where is he?" Zeba told the king, "He is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodebar." So King David had him brought from the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodebar. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed low with his face to the ground. David said, "Mephibosheth?" He replied, "Yes, at your service." David said to him, "Don't be afraid, because I will certainly extend kindness to you for the sake of Jonathan your father. I will give back to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will be regular guests at my table." Then Mephibosheth bowed and said, "Of what importance am I, your servant, that you showed regard for a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Zeba, Saul's attendant, and said to him, "Everything that belonged to Saul and to the entire house I hereby give to your master's grandson. You will cultivate the land for him, you and your sons and your servants. You will bring its produce, and it will be food for your master's grandson to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will be a regular guest at my table." Now Zeba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Zeba said to the king, "Your servant will do everything that my lord the king has instructed his servant to do." So Mephibosheth was a regular guest at David's table, just as though he were one of the king's sons. Now Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. All the members of Zeba's house were Mephibosheth's servants. Mephibosheth was living in Jerusalem, for he was a regular guest at the king's table, but both his feet were crippled. Now, one of the things that we have to think about is we have to think about as we're going through, we don't have to assume things are linear, meaning that this episode is following the previous episode. Just because it says, "Then David asked," doesn't mean time-wise, he just got finished with all of this stuff of the temple, and now he's going to ask God, is there anyone left to Saul? We don't have to think about these all events as being linear, like one after another. We're putting them in historical order. This is the order in which they want to reveal things about the story to us. So it is now being revealed. We've come back to, we had the seed planted of Mephibosheth having an escape early on. We've not come back to him. We needed some time to dwell on what happened to him. Now we're going to find out, David is taking and thinking about him. So David asked, "Is there anyone still left of the family of Saul that I might extend kindness for the sake of Jonathan?" So not because of Saul, but because of Jonathan. Now there was a servant of Saul's house named Zeba, so he was summoned to David. So he asked his servants, "Yeah, we know a servant. We'll go ask him. We'll bring him in. He'll know if someone's alive." He replied, "At your service. Is there anyone left that I can extend kindness?" Zeba says, "One of Jonathan's sons is left. He's crippled in both feet." So we already know this. We know what happened. It's being mentioned here. It's being replayed over and over again. But I think part of it, too, is, David, he's no threat to you. Zeba could be giving this information because he's no threat to you, to your kingship. He's crippled in both feet. He can't come fight against you. David asked, "Where is he?" He's in the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodebar. So he tells where he is. David will find out anyway. Why not tell him? So King David had him brought, when he brought Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed low with his face toward the ground. So he is crippled in both feet. So that is like either he's in a wheelchair of some kind. I don't know what they would have, a chair of some kind that he's carried around on. Maybe it is anyway, we don't know how he's transported. So, but my point is, if he's sitting on the ground because he cannot stand, bowing low to the ground with your face towards the ground would also be a proper posture, but he's already in a humble position to start with, and he's still willing to humble himself before the king. Even though his grandfather was king, he is bowing down to the current king. He would have known Jonathan's relationship with David as well. So let me see if there's anything on the footnote. At your service. Look, your servant. Okay. But David starts out with, don't be afraid. Yeah, that's a natural thing. That's why I also want to think about it is like we would naturally think of a wheelchair, but he's crippled in both legs. So it's both legs. He has to be carried places. He has to be carried. So maybe it's more like on a mat, like the crippled man in the New Testament that's lowered through the roof. That might be a good image for us to have in mind. So don't be afraid. I will extend kindness for the sake of your father, Jonathan. I will give back to you the land that belonged to your grandfather, and you'll regularly eat at my table. So don't be afraid. I know the normal thing that happens in the nations all around is when a king takes over from a previous king, you kill off all the family so there's no heirs to the throne. Not happening here. You are going to get all of your possessions back that were your grandfather's. Your family is going to be reestablished. Your line is going to be reestablished, and you are going to be my guest. Now, Mephibosheth says, of what importance am I, your servant, that you show regard for a dead dog like me? Mephibosheth understands he's no threat. Mephibosheth understands David is the one in charge and power. He's also crippled. It's like society would have no regard for me. Nobody has regard for me. You're showing regard for me. You are the king. You could have me killed. It's like, this is genuine, I believe, honor and homage and humbleness on the part of Mephibosheth. Then the king summoned Zeba, Saul's attendant, and said to him, everything that belongs to Saul and to your entire house, I hereby give to your master's grandson. So he brings the servant in. He's doing this, and now he's giving instructions to Zeba. You serve the king. You still serve the king, the former king's household. You will cultivate his land, you and your sons and your servants. You will bring in produce, and it will be food for your master's grandson to eat. But Mephibosheth will regularly sit at the seats of sit at the king's table. He'll be a guest at my table. Zeba had 15 sons and 20 servants. So how's he going to carry out the order of all of this? This is how he's going to do it. He's going to eat at the king's table, which means he's got to live in Jerusalem. We'll have that a little bit later. He's got to live nearby, so he's not necessarily on the land. However, eating at the king's table is not necessarily a daily thing. There's going to be the new moon festivals, which you're going to eat at the king's table. We saw that when David was absent from Saul at the new moon festival. So eating at the king's table doesn't necessarily mean daily, but it's going to be monthly occasions when you eat there. Also being a descendant of one who tried to kill David. Oh, yes. Good point, bringing that in. He is a descendant of someone who tried to kill David, and now you're honoring me? Like, this doesn't make sense. I'm pretty sure, I would think, Rhizone, since it's his father, he would have an understanding of the relationship that Jonathan had to David. He was a young kid, but he might not remember it fully. Your servant will do everything that the Lord has commanded. So Zeba is on board with all of this. So Mephibosheth was regularly a guest at the table, just as though he were one of the king's son. Now Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. So now we find out just because Mephibosheth was crippled did not make him unable to produce offspring. It wasn't necessarily, like we might think, it wasn't a spinal injury that paralyzed him from the legs. It was below that in some way that he is crippled. So maybe double broken legs, broken hip, socket, but not going to be spinal injury that would cause everything from the legs to not function. All the members of Zeba's household were Mephibosheth's servants. Mephibosheth was living in Jerusalem, for he was a regular guest at the table. Both his feet were crippled. So now, just to clarify, we've said he's been crippled in his feet. We're going to say it one more time. Both his feet were crippled. So every time he's got to go back and forth from the king's table to his household, someone has to carry him. Someone has to transport him. He can't do this all on his own.